Hey everybody, today's species spotlight is one that I've been asked to do a number of times for quite a long period of time, but I've been putting it off for two very good reasons. The first of which is that I didn't have very good video of this species, and now I finally actually have some of which was provided by my good friends at Braden Exotics, who have supplied their animals for a number of videos, and at the end of this you want to check out the playlist Species Spotlight. You can see quite a few of their animals in all of those videos. Now we have a couple other good examples of them as well. The other one of which, and I do apologize for the people that hate these long intros, I'm going to keep this as concise as I possibly can, is that I want to give you the best possible, easily digestible information about anything I talk about on these videos. A video that I did over 2 years ago at this point about Western or Texas rat snakes honestly was just kind of verbal diarrhea, going over a bunch of fairly complicated terminology and honestly a bunch of highly debated information that I wasn't even truly aware of, and I just came off as just not really sounding like I knew what I was talking about. And to be completely honest with you, I really didn't. So for this video, I did hours and hours and days of research and talking to keepers, talking to breeders, talking to people who work in the pet industry, who deal with locality people, dealing with papers, dealing with books, all of these things to give you the best possible video that I can tell you about the black rat snake. So, with that out of the way, let's get into this amazing species of snake. So the black rat snake is a really cool, usually dark, North American colubrid that belongs to the genus Pantheropus, and those are a lot of the rat snake type colubrids. The most famous of which, obviously, is the corn snake. Now, the black rat snake, outside of just what we generally refer to as usually a dark or black North American colubrid that we keep in the hobby, is one of the most debated and sometimes fought about conversation of reptile species, at least as far as taxonomy goes, that dates back to the 1800s. It has been going on for that long, and it is still going on today. So, the black rat snake, rat snakes in general, let's just go from that. Rat snakes in general live in North America, obviously. Their range basically extends from the eastern part all the way into central part of the United States and a little bit into Canada and a little bit into Mexico. Essentially, they occupy from parts of Mexico, Florida, all the way along the coast of the Atlantic, into Canada, and then from the Atlantic coastline, literally sometimes on the beach, all the way over into central USA, into parts of Texas, Nebraska, and those type of Midwestern states, and inhabit basically every single type of habitat you can think of in that range. Forests, mountains, meadows, prairies, cities, deserts, suburban areas, everything. They're a highly adaptable snake. They're very, very slender. They're not a very girthy snake, and typically they're known for their very long lengths. They're semi-arboreal, and there's even a whole Facebook group called Rat Snakes in Silly Situations, or Rat Snakes in Predicaments, where people just come across these snakes in just all sorts of weird things because they are so adaptable and have gotten used to not only human habitation but rural areas as well. And because of that, they're actually one of the most seen, at least as far as like coming across, oh, there's a snake species in North America. Probably the most observed one right underneath the garter snake, obviously being the most common snake on the entire continent. But these guys are well known and have a whole bunch of all of the other crazy, dumb little common names, one of which being the chicken snake, which is also shared by several racers and bull snakes and gopher snakes, because they have a propensity for going into chicken coops and eating sometimes not just the eggs of chickens, but sometimes smaller chickens themselves. And they just get up to a whole lot of silly antics. Now, when we generally think of the black rat snake, we are thinking about a very long, usually slender snake, and they are known to be quite long, sometimes getting over 7 feet in length, and usually in dark complexion, usually fairly dark, sometimes solid black, but that is pretty rare, and almost every single one, at least as far as adults go, have a yellowish to creamish white, sometimes pure white underbelly under their chin and along their bellies. And that is the adults. However, almost all rat snakes look very different. They go through an autogenetic change. That's a term that you hear me throw out quite often. A good example of that is the green tree python. They are born bright yellow or red, And then as they get older, they usually turn a shade or version of green. And obviously there's a whole bunch of other ones in there too, but you get what I'm going for, right? Most rat snakes, regardless of where they are in this habitat and range, usually start out as kind of like an earthy grayish color, sometimes a little ruddy red-brown, with darker blotches on them. And then as they get older, they will slowly start to change. In the case of a lot of the black rat snakes, at least that we think of, usually they'll start to turn that more solid black color, although sometimes the pattern does remain. Sometimes they're more of a chocolatey color. Sometimes those bold blotches will even turn into kind of a striped pattern, and eventually you get the kind of grays, blacks, oranges, reds, and yellows of the adult rat snakes. And essentially, that's mostly where us as hobbyists kind of comes to an end, and then we get to the part where not only keepers, but biologists and herpetologists start to fight and bicker with each other. So for a long time, black rat snakes were, again, this is all in the genus Pantheropus, were considered the species Obsoleta. However, that is the western rat snakes, which the Texas rat snakes are all wrapped up in there too. But sometimes the darkest and the blackest and the longest of the black rat snakes are often found along the East Coast in places like South Carolina, North Carolina, even up into Maine and Canada. In fact, the longest recorded snake in North America was an eastern or a black rat snake found in Quebec. So it was always odd to me that Obsoleta is this black rat snake that's a western rat that, as we can, don't worry, we're going to get there, is up here over there. Well, as it turns out, this is a really big debated thing. As far as kind of like the central and eastern rat snakes that all kind of get thrown together in like the blacks, easterns, westerns, Texas, grays, Everglades, yellows, all of those, they are all kind of usually broken into three different categories. The westerns, the grays, and then the easterns. And then it gets super convoluted from there. And I talk a little bit about this in my North American rat snake video. I'll try to put them right here. And then as far as like keepers go, we usually try to stick with things that make sense, because as human beings, we need everything to fit in cute little tight, neat boxes. And so when we look at a lot of the eastern rats, those are what a lot of the time, physically, morphologically speaking, those look like the black rats. Those are the ones that are found in Missouri and in Georgia and in North Carolina and Maine, all those ones that are usually the very dark animals, usually very long animals. But there's a whole bunch of diversity in there. Some papers, some scientists have said that all eastern rats, regardless if they're the striped ones, if they're the blotched ones, if they're the Everglades ones, if they're the ones found in Canada and Maine, those are all eastern rats. And then and then there's the grays, and then there's the westerns, and then you can have variations in them. Some scientists say that the westerns are one, the easterns are one, the striped ones are one, so like the Everglades and the yellows, that's their own separate subspecies, so 1, 2, 3, and then the gray rats in the middle, Spilotes, is an intergrade. And it's all convoluted, and they've all written different papers, some quoting others, some ignoring other papers, and citing all these different things, and it's all a big giant jumbly mess. The difficult part comes to what exactly we define things when it comes to keeping. In some states where these animals are actually found natively, it's illegal or requires special permitting to keep these animals. And so, when one state's DNR or Fish and Wildlife Department doesn't recognize one of those papers that's a newly one citing all these different things about, DNA and mitochondrial differences as well as morphological differences, but if they don't recognize that one specific paper, even though they'll recognize ones that they're based off of, then that isn't recognized by that, and then you could potentially be keeping your snake illegally. So, as far as we can really consider, as far as keeping a black rat snake as hobbyists, which I imagine most people watching this are, black rat snakes are just darker snakes that, as well as known for their darker complexion, have a ton of different morphs. Like this little calico girl here, as well as white-sided and albino and licorice and all these other really cool stuff, including leucistics. Not to mention the fact that a lot of these rat snakes that we've had in captivity are mutts, not only based on what currently recognized subspecies differentiation, that they intergrade so much. A lot of the gray rats can be looking like westerns, yellows, or dark black easterns, and they have an integrating overlapping range. And so a lot of them, unless we find that there are certain ones that like some morphs of leucistic or hypo aren't integrated in with other ones that come. It's like, for instance, the hypo of one Western is not the same as a hypo from like an Everglades, and you can end up having a double het. And I think I got that right. Apologies if I didn't. I'm not super into the morphs, but there are compatibility differences of specific morphs from specific locales that are not compatible with each other. So outside of that, a lot of them, we just kind of call them pet rat snakes. But there are ones that we could actually call black rats based on true locality. There are some that come from only very specific areas, usually identified by the counties in which those animals were initially wild collected, legally, hopefully, and we end up keeping a very closed batch, and we keep them all in the same, so that way they stay consistently from that one area. Then those wouldn't truly be mutts. And then regardless of what scientist of paper we're quoting from who, if this one particular group of animals comes from this one particular county in North Carolina, and they're always very black, and they're always, I mean, we get that line breeding, interbreeding, and all that other stuff is a whole other subject, but they all come from this one area, and they're all black. We can call those X County, North Carolina black rat snakes, X County, Massachusetts rat snakes, Georgia rat snakes, Illinois rat snakes, and then heck, even there are some that are exceptionally dark over from like Texas and western Louisiana and those type of places, where they could also be locality black rat snakes, even though those would be westerns versus easterns. So hopefully that was not crazy jumbled up garbage that you gave across that. I started several Facebook fights about North American clubrids doing research on this video, including an old school guy that really laid into me, not understanding that he was saying essentially what I had done previously with the Western rat snake video is what I was doing this time. And he kind of took a little bit of a high and mighty road about it, but I completely understand where he was coming from, because he doesn't, and honestly, I don't like it either. There is a large amount of people that just read a Wikipedia article and spew it back. That's an 80% of the research that I'm doing, I'm coming across when I do all these videos. It's just recycled, copy and pasted Wikipedia articles coming from different ones. And heck, even sometimes I will go through and find the citations from both Wikipedia articles and other websites, and they just go back to each other. They're citing each other. So no real citations of any sort of verified expert research behind it. So it can be very difficult. And so that's why I really took a lot of time in today's video to really talk about these guys. Now, as far as actually captive care for these really cool rat snakes, regardless if we're calling it an eastern, a gray, a western, a black, or whatever, they come from North America, so for the most part they come from a subtropical or further north into arids and temperate and those type of climates. So that means they're usually very adaptable, and if I didn't make that apparent enough in the video, I mean they are truly adaptable. They can be found all over the place, and it just has to tweak their hot spots and humid hides just a little bit. Typically, they're not out in the middle of the blazing day, so, think about the usual North American colubrid hot spots. You still want to give them a decent basking area. They're more crepuscular than anything, so they're going to be most active at dawn and dusk, but we've seen them out in the middle of the day, depending on the temperature and the time of the year, so give them plenty of space, give them spaces to climb, and they might be a little bit more active if you give them a really good kind of temperature gradient. Again, they like to climb. They're more crepuscular, so give them plenty of places to hide. Give them that full spectrum UVA, UVB lighting. A lot of times those very dark animals have a lot of that iridescence that we really like to see. Black rat snakes, and really most rat snakes in general, not only from North America, but old world rat snakes are well known for their sometimes cantankerous attitudes. That doesn't always happen to be the case. Even this little calico girl here that we've shown a couple times at this point is a little baby, less than a year old. Actually, she's coming up on a year old now. Take her out every single time, no big deals. Wild-caught animals, sometimes they're very easy to deal with. Other times, not so much, like the leucistic rat snake that we have. But they are still very easy to keep as far as a husbandry standard goes. They're usually great feeders, so they usually make very good captives. And being an animal that can adjust to kind of everything, and being crepuscular, not truly nocturnal, is one that you might see a little bit more often than, say, a ball python or something similar to that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Again, hopefully I didn't throw too much out at you, and it was fairly concise. So, to sum up kind of all of this and kind of my thoughts at the end, if you have a North American rat snake, Pantheropus, whatever, they're calling it, depending on who you're arguing with over on the internet in this particular day and age. If it's a black looking rat snake and it doesn't come from a particular locality and you want to call it a black rat, have at it. If it does come from a particular locality and you want to call it this locality black rat, cool. This particular locality western gray eastern rat, cool. Not a problem. As long as you're sticking with what it is and you're not lying about what it is, have at it. As long as you're doing the best by the animals, that's all that I can really ask for. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Again, if you want to check out the full species spotlight list, you can go check that out. You can go back and watch the old western rat snake video and just go, oh my gosh, what was he doing at that point? Then go for it. You can make fun of me in the comments. Just try not to be too mean about it. But anyway, again, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you all so much. If you want to see other species spotlights, other topics, I do write them down. I really do. I understand it takes me a long time, but my little notebook here, I finally used the last of my snake one. Now I'm on my Bigfoot one. I do write down all the stuff, and if I think it can be a good video, I do try to do them for you guys. Any other questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments, email me, all that social media jazz. Hope you're having a great day, and we will check you next time.